In the elegant but remote luxury resort nestled on the rocky coast, Audrey Blake worked silently. She was a luggage porter, hauling designer bags and hefty suitcases off the sleek helicopters that regularly touched down on the resort's precariously perched landing pad. Her attire was simple, a plain polo shirt and sturdy trousers, functional rather than fashionable. Each morning, she tied back her auburn hair, ensuring it stayed out of her eyes as she maneuvered baggage through the elite chaos swarming the resort. Guests passed her without so much as a nod, their eyes sliding over her as if she were as unremarkable as the luggage carts she pushed. Whispers and sidelong glances sometimes met her from passing guests, remarking on her nondescript uniform or the weathered edges of her hands. Occasionally, a snide comment reached her ears, a wealthy woman commenting to her husband as they swept by, "I'd think they'd at least fit their staff in something presentable." Today, the resort was alive with anticipation. A new influx of well-heeled visitors had fastened their sunglasses as a helicopter's sleek form hovered into view. It descended towards solid ground, the downdraft rustling the palm fronds as the guests leaned forward, eager to spot celebrities or business moguls behind the tinted windows. Then, without warning, the helicopter started a perilous spin. Its tail rotor faltered under an unanticipatedly strong coastal gust. The rotor's erratic whine sliced through the dreamy ambience of chatter and champagne flutes clinking. Eyes widened in horror. Luggage began to slide precariously on the pad, and screams pierced the air as everyone instinctively retreated. Only one figure surged forward through the panic, Audrey, her eyes locked on the windswept flag of the windsock. Panic rippled through the gathered crowd like a tidal wave. Guests and resort staff alike froze, rooted in place by the sudden fear of the helicopter's spiraling dance. There was a discordant cacophony, shouts, gasps, and the breathless thudding of people backing away from the whirling machine. Audrey, standing at the edge of the landing pad, gripped the handle of her luggage cart, her heart thundering in her chest. But rather than succumb to the tide of fear, her mind snapped into sharp focus. The old instinct she hadn't realized still lay dormant took command, and in a flurry of adrenaline-charged clarity, she bolted forward. As she ran, time seemed to slow around her, the world adrift in the shallow light of the late afternoon sun. She headed straight for the windsock. The fabric tube, intended to indicate wind direction and intensity, flapped aggressively in the sudden gusts. Audrey knew she needed to make herself seen, to control the escalating chaos with authority. Using the windsock's height to her advantage, she clambered up the pole in a few swift motions, dirt from her boots smudging the pristine white as she went. Perched on the pole's midpoint, she waved her free arm and yelled over the mechanical clamor, her voice cutting through the din. Energy electrified her words, turning them from timid pleasantries into decisive commands, the calm, authoritative tone of a woman who had once orchestrated 100 emergency responses. "Everyone, move back. Pilot, reduce throttle incrementally." Her voice carried conviction, snapping heads in her direction and drawing the eyes not to her, but through her, as though she were an extension of the wind-tossed flag. The swirl of confusion stalled as focused attention planted hope in the crowd's hearts. The pilot, sweat glistening on his brow, finally acknowledged the unfamiliar but commanding presence in his periphery. With monumental effort, he adjusted the controls in compliance with Audrey's shouted instructions. The helicopter's hysterical rotation began to stabilize, the sleek body suddenly more ghostly than fierce. A ripple of calm seemed to extend from Audrey as she levered herself to see better. "Ground crew, secure the luggage. It's rolling toward the pad edge. Someone, take cover." She motioned firmly, and those nearby gained clarity, their limbs moving with renewed purpose. Resort staff scrambled, diverting the threatening cascade of baggage that rattled towards the precipice, narrowly avoiding a precarious fate on the jagged rocks below. The guests, guided by Audrey's unwavering direction, began an orderly retreat, ushered away from the helipad's danger zone. Onlookers assisted each other, becoming more than strangers brought together by exclusivity, but fellow survivors of a shared ordeal. One guest, a businessman in impeccably tailored attire and conspicuous watch, helped an elder lady who had tripped in panic. Another woman, in heels ill-suited for running, was supported by a teenager she'd never met, each bolstered by Audrey's implicit, silent belief in their ability to overcome. Audrey's heart thudded in her chest like a drumbeat as the guests filed away to safety, her urgency prefaced by encouragement carrying each forward. Her motions were precise, dictated by practiced hands and muscle memory, not the desperate fumblings of untempered fear. As luggage was kicked aside, and the startled ground crew members picked themselves up from hiding behind the equipment shed, Audrey descended from her post. The helicopter, still teetering on the edge of danger, now held steady, incrementally powering down under the pilot's skilled hands and Audrey's unwavering grip on the unfolding scenario. By the time the helicopter completed its precarious descent safely, a heartbeat passed, and then applause erupted from the crowd. Cheers of relief mixed with gratitude seemed to wash over the landing pad, ebbing from mouths which had been moments ago strapped in near-scream terror. Amid the chaos of adulation, voices cried out, naming the once invisible heroine of the sky-shattered afternoon, Audrey. She stood there, inhaling deeply, her adrenaline like molten gold in her veins. The snubbed porter brought a crowd to their senses as their survival paralleled her resurgence, ignoring the past perceptions that had consigned her to the background like the muted tones of her uniform. A resort guest, who had their arms wrapped tightly around them moments earlier, emerged from the throng to shake Audrey's hand. "I thought I was done for," they confessed with glossy eyes. "You saved us all." Audrey mustered a grateful smile, nodding to emphasize the collective triumph, humbled by the mass of acknowledging eyes anchored on her. Here was not the time for long speeches or reassurances, her practicality led rescue, but the wind would carry congratulations beyond the present, each reference to a savior spinning out like broadcast seeds. As the guests departed from the epicenter of their aerial close call, murmured conversations bubbled like fresh streams beneath the gratitude-laden surface. Measured documentaries of the event marked every shareable moment. Guests flooded the digital realm with snippets of the miracle amid disaster, Audrey at its heart. With threads of maritime breeze rustling against both the tide and terrain, the light of the lowering sun danced over Audrey as she took a step back from the helipad. The mockery she had faced earlier washed away, unstitched and vanishing into the deeper, more meaningful recognition earned through courage rather than cloth, and actions rather than appearance. Across the horizon, the sea stretched out like a forgiving friend, the calm after chaos reflecting Audrey smiling back at her before waving tiredly to the retreating forms who carried pieces of her into future evenings. A heavy exuberance overtook her, an overwhelming sense of possibilities abandoned and reclaimed in a ripple of renewed faith. Audrey knew this moment marked a new chapter, an epiphany revisiting old dreams with renewed ambition. As the tumultuous day settled to a close and the light faded from vivid gold to subdued dusk, Audrey found herself leaning against the resort's stone wall. Her heartbeat still thrummed with vestiges of the adrenaline that had carried her through the helicopter's near disaster. Her thoughts drifted back to quieter times, not uniformly easier, but filled with a different rhythm of challenges that had once driven her. Flashbacks tapped gently at her mind's eye, unfurling memories like photographs. There was Audrey as she once was, a civilian paramedic in a bustling urban environment, racing through the city's arteries in an ambulance that felt as familiar as her own skin. The gentle weight of her paramedic uniform was a comforting reminder of the lives she'd touched and saved, her badge worn with confidence for every emergency call that crackled through her radio. Scenes played out in her memory, vivid, high-stakes moments where Audrey's quick thinking and steady nerves had been not just assets, but essentials. She recalled the night she and her team rolled up to a chaotic street accident, headlights revealing tangled metal and injured strangers who needed not only bandages but resolve. An overheated diner diced with potential tragedy when a fire emergency sent her vaulting across tables, coordinating those inside and outside with a vast, almost inherent understanding of safety protocols. Her life brimmed with such incidents. A river rescue that had her wade into frigid waters to cradle a panicked boy and pull him to the muddy bank. The day she was called to a skills competition where a choking child turned into a breathless battle won by her expertly applied pressure thrusts and ventilations. Yet, looming over these professional triumphs was a shadow wrought from personal tragedy. It had arrived unceremoniously, vicious in its simplicity. Her young daughter, Eliza, suffered a severe injury during an innocent playtime. Eliza, a lively sprite with eyes the color of the azure sea, became Audrey's whole world, necessitating care as immediate and real as the emergencies Audrey once tackled daily. With Eliza facing long-term rehabilitation, Audrey stripped away the layers of her own ambition to focus inward, to turn her hard-earned calm and competence toward fostering recovery in her own home. The gravity of her decision bore heavy, the vocation she loved simmered to a gentle ebb, while caring for Eliza emerged paramount. Through Eliza's months of therapy and adaptation, Audrey found that her grit must extend beyond what she had ever imagined, redirecting finances which were once marginally comfortable into a necessity-driven economy. Departing the demanding life of street alarms and flashing lights for the quiet isolation of that coastal resort had been more of a landing than a choice. Here, beneath the fervor of yachts and anchored influence, audacity and daylight flickered through struggle's shadows. Audrey began working at the resort initially for stable, predictable hours, the tranquility a balm against the worry that lay in Eliza's face, who cheered the sight of hue-rich coral blooms and the splash of herring gulls diving regal over the cliff edge. Eliza's bright spirit shaped Audrey's new world, one where small wonders took the place of larger ambitions, and healing placed above hurry. With every lift and heave of luggage on sweltering days, she honed not muscles but her inner resolve, safeguarding her skills on the sidelines like trusted friends. During her breaks beneath the cooling palms, she would study emergency response materials, books and articles she had gathered, and although she was surrounded by opulence defined in stately manners and lavish escapades, she remained grounded, steadfast in her purpose. Routines, once foreign in hurried ambulances, became familiar here. Practicing emergency drills settled in her muscle memory as echoes followed through her days. But amidst these broader joys and midnight reminiscences, there lingered a pulse, a yearning to affirm her abilities in a life restored and resplendent. Her passion, elusive like windswept sand, lapped faintly but poised eagerly at her horizon. Audrey pushed away from the wall, longing mingling with quiet resolve. She wandered through the resort's gravel paths lined by flowering hedges, tracing steps along idyllic stone that whispered back refreshingly. The evening air brushed her skin like a benediction, and for a moment, she allowed herself to be swept up in the still chorus of the moment. Eliza's voice, suddenly bright with laughter, reached her ears and guided her back to reality. She turned to see her daughter running toward her, the guardian stars shimmering in her wake. Audrey knelt, meeting Eliza's jubilant embrace with arms and heart wide open. Audrey was buoyed by the thought of moving forward. What had felt like dismaying sacrifice had, bit by bit, revealed itself as opportunity, an invocation to not only reclaim her past but to sculpt anew. The tide of conversation among the resort's elite, though already swirling the day's events, seemed distant and fading away. Yet from the fathomless churning of change rose something else, gratitude. Audrey felt this must not merely tendril away through lips and devices but instead solidify into foundation, a cornerstone ready to bear and build something enduring. As she held Eliza close, the stakes of those shimmering memories and today's events fused into a sense of inevitability. She breathed out, each release surrendered any dwelling on missed chances or lingering fears. To watch Eliza run and live and laugh was to watch the embodiment of every reason Audrey might ever have had to pause or to rise as circumstances did. Their embrace was the present past with simplicity and achieved into fidelity, small but resilient against the vast canvas of stars. Tomorrow's light would bring new warmth, and Audrey knew it was just the beginning for both her and her daughter, a sign that the next chapter was already being written somewhere atop those rugged cliffs, below unfurled sails, and beneath the ever-watchful eyes of a tranquil sky. The whispers of the day's near disaster surfed the waves of conversation throughout the resort. Guests who had been there recounted their view of the event to those who had missed it, at first with dramatic exaggeration, but later with a sincere recognition of the inherent danger they had faced. Audrey had returned to her duties with a renewed sense of purpose, every heft of the luggage and each nod of acknowledgement a stitch in the fabric of her reinvigorated self-worth. As evening settled, a thoughtful applause erupted sporadically in the dining hall, where guests had gathered for the nightly gourmet menu. Word of the heroic rescue had spun itself into social media threads, weaving a tale that drew both admiration and awe. Videos of Audrey's calm climb and impromptu rescue coordination began to surface online, intertwined with heartfelt recounts of their own perilous experiences. Frames captured Audrey against the stark sky, her silhouette a beacon guiding their survival. The story was becoming legend before it even fully settled into memory. At dinner, the resort manager, a stoic figure named Mr. Whitfield, who rarely seemed to demonstrate strong emotion, rose from his seat at the head of the table, adjusting his suit jacket with measured precision. The orchestra of clinking utensils and murmurs of conversation gradually tapered to silence as he tapped his glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice measured yet warm, "today many of us witnessed the extraordinary. We were reminded of how unpredictable life can be, but also how fortunate we are to find heroes amongst us." He gestured toward Audrey, and eyes followed, brimming with recognition and a newfound respect. "I wish to personally thank Audrey Blake, one of our own, whose swift actions not only ensured everyone's safety but transformed what could have been a tragedy into a celebration of human fortitude." A wave of applause swept through the room, robust and sincere. Audrey, though ruffled by the sudden spotlight, stood and gave a slight nod, her smile both humble and proud. She felt the sincere gazes of gratitude, their intensity a balm, eclipsing past days of obscurity and sidelined recitations of skill. After the applause subsided, guests began approaching her with words of thanks, admiration, and even a few teary-eyed embraces. Each conversation gilded with appreciation for the composure under duress, cementing her status as a heroine not just of the mere moment but of a collective memory. The transformation was palpable, like a page turning audibly in the minds of every observer. Guests who once passed her without acknowledgement now sought her out, eager to convey their gratitude, to etch their version of the memory embedded with brave and relentless energy. Audrey shifted from the fringes of their experience, once a nearly invisible utility, to a central narrative figure whose values resonated deeply. Beyond these immediate interactions, the ripples extended further as hotel patrons shared their newfound reverence with a curious, unending digital audience. A well-known travel blogger, who had been somewhat skeptical upon arrival, tagged her post with an emphatic, "The real heart of luxury, courage # Audrey the hero," capturing Audrey's silhouetted determination against the twilit sky. The post quickly flew across platforms, the image inspiring a number of spirited hashtags that amused and warmed Audrey's suddenly buzzing phone. Meanwhile, guests tweeted and status updated their gratitude, linking snippets of the video where Audrey's confident gestures orchestrated their rescue. In the resort's nearby employee lounge, once cluttered with forgotten neglect, co-workers gathered, their usual mundane complaints and routine gossip transformed into an excited retelling of the afternoon's heroics. Audrey could feel the air charged with something new, a respect that had until now eluded her despite her proficiency and earnestness. Behind her, as she leaned against the lounge counter, the newer staff exchanged anecdotes about Audrey, drawing parallels to cinematic moments and turning them into tales of admiration they'd share with pride. The old news clippings and photographs of Audrey in her paramedic uniform began circulating online, linked back to the viral story from today. Images of her at the scene of previous emergencies emerged, accompanied by glowing commendations long buried beneath layers of time and new priorities. The fills and folds of her past now unfurled, the forgotten headlines making their rounds with a renewed audience as people connected the dots of her current heroism to her storied profession. As the evening unfolded, something shifted quietly yet tangibly across the resort campus. The hotel staff started to treat Audrey differently, not just as an admired colleague, but as someone whose mastery in emergencies translated into everyday respect. Where eyes had once slid over her with expectation, they now met hers first with silent gratitude and then budding friendship, steps aligned with genuine smiles at each address. Guests would approach Audrey, not solely with earnest thanks, but curiosity kindled by those they had helped foster, conversations about her life beyond the resort, especially inquiries about her adventures as a paramedic. These dialogues painted her in colors varied and vivid, with sprawling textures, lifting the then into now wrapped delicately yet resiliently by narrative strands interwoven by occasion. Standing near the edge of the lawn adorned with subtle lighting, Eliza hugged her mother's side lightly, her small stature underscoring the strength pervasive beneath her embrace. "Mom, you're famous," she declared with an airy, buoyant voice, as if the very stars had whispered down her mother's newfound renown. Audrey laughed gently, casting a reassuring glance down to Eliza. "I'm just me, sweet pea," she replied, brushing a stray hair from Eliza's cheek. "But it's nice to be seen, sometimes. To know we can make a difference and help people see their own courage, too." Audrey squeezed Eliza's hand, feeling the truth in their shared smile. All around them, the evening unfolded into gentle echoes of community, bravery, and a familiar strength rediscovered amid the world's alternating serenity and storm. Each laugh, conversation, and brush of gratitude buoyed Audrey's heart forward, a profound reminder of the tapestry we each weave, our stories crafted as existence fuses with determination to live with purpose no matter the path. In this poised moment, leaning together under a star-strewn sky, Audrey whispered, "We're on a good adventure, E." Eliza smiled bright as the moon, knowing her mother stood captivated in a life that, for both of them, would be lived outward and upward from now on. Days ebbed into weeks, and the resort gradually slid back into its usual rhythm of lavish leisure and ocean-kissed days. Yet, the transformation instigated by Audrey Blake's actions rippled outwards, touching lives beyond the confines of sandstone terraces and immaculate fine dining experiences. Even in the quietude of her subsequent duties, Audrey noticed things had irrevocably shifted. Colleagues sought her advice more frequently, her name, once spoken in passing, now carried weight. Guests continued to greet her warmly, and every now and then, someone would stop to relay a profound thank you or delightedly recount the story of the day the helicopter spun. Her heart, previously disciplined into silence, now resonated with a melody of renewed purpose. Then, one clear morning, as the first hints of dawn wove tenderly through the sky, Audrey found herself standing on the sun-warmed expanse of the pad where the dramatic scene had unfolded. It was here, amid the echoes of rotors and resilience, that an unexpected encounter awaited. A car, sleek and understated in design, approached the landing area. From the driver's side emerged a woman dressed with casual sophistication, her expression equally kind and determined. She approached Audrey with a gentle smile, her handshake firm and reassuring in its warmth. "Ms. Blake, I'm Lily Crane, Director of the Foundations for Second Careers program at the International Rescue Training Institute. I've come to talk to you about an opportunity," she said, her voice imbued with sincerity. "I read about your actions here, and there's a place in our advanced recertification program with your name on it, if you're interested." Audrey listened, taking in the offer that unfurled possibilities like the first light across the ocean. It was an elite program designed for professionals like her, those who had stepped away but still carried the torch of excellence, waiting to be rekindled in structured training. Credentialing and childcare support were part of the package, and the gleam in Lily's eye hinted at the belief she had in Audrey's potential for extraordinary impact. Despite the buoyancy of the prospect, Audrey hesitated. Throughout Eliza's recovery, every decision had been predicated on providing stability and warmth. The thought of disrupting their carefully constructed equilibrium felt both invigorating and intimidating. What if she dedicated this time only to find herself rusty, her hard-earned skills tarnished by years of disuse and obscurity? But within that hesitation lay conviction, etched in the small voice of her daughter, the laughter-bedecked days cascading into moments rendered precious by the possibility of doing more, being more. Encouragement from the guests whose lives she'd impacted and those who had seen her shine fueled the embers of her professional flame, memory melding seamlessly to motive. "Mom?" Eliza's voice chimed in from nearby, her footsteps crunching gently on the mixed gravel as she approached. "What's happening?" Audrey knelt, capturing Eliza's gaze, verdant and pure like the nascent spring. "Eliza, what would you think if I stepped back into my paramedic role? There's a chance for me to help people again, the way I did here." Eliza's eyes widened with the understanding that children sometimes capture more completely than adults, an understanding tied not just to logic, but the heart's persuasive conviction. Her nod was bright, her voice wrapped in innocence and hope, wisdom clothed as encouragement. "You'd be great, Mom. You'd help so many people, like you helped that helicopter." With Eliza's support wrapping around her like a cherished cloak, Audrey felt her own hesitation lift, her fear unspooled into the sunlight as determination flowed in its place, unwavering and resolute. Returning her gaze to Lily, her decision was as grounded as the waves that kissed the rocky shore. "It sounds like a wonderful opportunity," Audrey said, gratitude weaving through her words. "Count me in." That night, as Audrey wrapped Eliza into her arms under the blanket of a quiet home, the weight of the day nestled softly into spaces spun through with both certainty and possibility. She knew the journey ahead held challenges, but it also dawned afresh with purpose embracing her form with steadfast warmth. The coming weeks were a blur of preparations, gentle departures, and emotion-laden visits to Eliza's school. Friends and newfound supporters rallied around them, amplifying the echoes of a new commitment into vibrant reality. The budding promise of a dream's continuation in an unexpected place filled each moment. Finally, the day arrived when Audrey would reconvene with her vocation, the morning spread wide open, ready to cradle a tapestry of interwoven new and old. She donned her recertification training uniform, its fabric soft but defined, echoing the nostalgia of her paramedic past infused with the potential of now. It felt like shaking hands with her former self and embracing an advanced, renewed version in the same breath. As she entered the training facility, welcomed by the excited nods of instructors and peers alike, Audrey felt a profound sense of belonging, one harvested from the seeds of past struggles and the deep resolve unveiled since. Each classroom, hallway, and seminar represented another step forward, a testament to her steadfast resilience and the stepping stone of worlds held dear yet extended loyally into uncharted lands of healing and hope. In the evenings, after a day filled with renewed learning and camaraderie, Audrey would return to their cozy abode where Eliza awaited her with open arms and ceaseless stories of adventures engaging her at school. Each embrace was an exchange of stories, a ritual the two indulged with acceptance and shared discovery, plotting futures not as separate entities but as an entwined narrative of dreams seen, dreamed, and achieved, together. Audrey's past and present merged seamlessly, like tributaries feeding the grand river of her life, shaping and reshaping the landscape of her world. As she sat by Eliza's bedside, reading whimsical tales under the soft glow of a shared lamp, the gleam in Eliza's eyes mirrored the night sky's quiet resolution, the same luster Audrey had used to guide her path with compassion and strength. Audrey had come home, not just in abode but truly within herself. She understood that heroic acts were not isolated events but the culmination of lifetimes interwoven by those willing to extend kindness and bravery. It was a living, breathing acknowledgement that bore the weight of failures turned to triumphs, fostering a newfound legacy that whispered across interspaces, traversed silences, and shone brightly, a beacon guiding them forward through forever night into dawn.